The presentation I'm going to be talking about today is skills for managing a documentation team. And this is a talk for tech writer team managers. It's for new managers. It's also for established and experienced managers looking for a refresh of the fundamentals. I'm going to be talking about cognitive psychology, specifically the theory and concept of a schema. I'm also going to be talking about why language, listening to words is important. And I'm going to be talking about why enthusiasm is important, because it's linked to well-being. So a schema, just for some more information, it's a lifelong set of patterns of seeing the world. And they're so fundamental because they're a pattern that affects behavior, and they're a pattern that affects emotions and thoughts. They're the foundation underneath how we react to events around us. So to, I guess, talk, I don't know, as an example, just to explain how these three things, language, enthusiasm, schemas, being aware of them for managers are useful, I'm just going to use stories from my recent experiences in the field. And they are just my opinions and stories, but they are backed up by a little bit of psychology theory. And I will start with the first story, which was interview 1 from application number 52 in my recent job hunt. So this was for a tech writing position that was advertised as being located in Brisbane, Australia, in the central business district in the city. And the type of skills that they were looking for were ability to work with developers, writing skills, editing skills, experience using tool chains to publish documentation, but specifically proprietary tools. So I talked about my experience that was transferable, which is in Docs as code, using Sphinx, using Markdown, restructured text. We've got other talks today about Docs as code, so you'll hear more about that later in the day. And I got from the Docs manager and the chief technology officer, who were the interview representatives on the panel, I got some interesting feedback that was very confusing to me. I didn't understand it. It took a while for me to reflect and figure it out. So this was very confusing to me why I would have this as feedback. Because I thought, well, no, I want to be a better technical writer. I don't want to be a developer. And I don't have a computer science degree. I'm not steeped in the education background, the language, the culture of having studied computer science or engineering. So strange that this was the impression that they got. But I started to think about the categories. So the role of a tech writer, the role of a software developer, the tasks, the skills that are involved in each role, and this categorization. And on reflecting, I thought, well, docs managers are in difficult positions. New ones, established ones, it can get very difficult for them because they're confronted with these two pathways. They could be discrete, they could cross over, but it's not always clear to managers what the crossover is, or if there is any overlap at all in their specific workplaces, in their context. Because I'm a visual learner, I just thought, well, what would that look like visually as a Venn diagram? So I guess this was a visual representation of the schema of the hiring manager for the tech writing team that I talked to that day. They saw these two roles as two discrete and distinct categories. So as soon as I started to figure this out and look at it visually, started to get rid of some of the confusion and understand what was going on here. So it never occurred to me that a tech writer manager would see these two skills this way. This, I realized, was a visual representation of my schema. This is how I was behaving, the emotions towards my career and my work, how I was seeing my role as a technical writer, and it was directly affecting the way I presented to myself. So of course, I sounded a bit like a software dev. This is my schema for software development and tech writing, overlap. And through this process of reflecting and trying to figure out my schema, I realized how important it is to reflect, to have self-awareness, to know what you want, to know, particularly in a job hunt, but for hiring managers and for managers of Doc's team, new or established, to be aware of your team's schemas and their experience and what they might look like. So in my reflection, and just to continue with more stories from my recent experiences in the field, I wanted to think about how did I arrive at behaving like I sounded like I wanted to be a software dev? How did my schema get this way? What pivotal event might have shaped this? Well, I did a 6-week JavaScript course in the middle of last year that was pretty pivotal to me and to the schema that I was developing and changing over time. And it shaped, I guess, directly how I was behaving on the day, thinking about the experiences that I had in that course. So just as some background, it was by a group called Just Coding. They're based out of Brisbane in Australia. It's run by a man named Brendan Kelly. He has a diverse team of volunteers who help to teach code, and they describe themselves as a social enterprise that brings the opportunity to learn code to everyone because their classes are free and they don't charge. And I guess the course crystallized a lot of the own study that I'd done before, and it helped shape my schema. When I started to look at the experiences that I'd had in the past 6 months and how my emotions, behavior, how I presented to myself, I'm like, this course was pretty significant. If I was talking to my manager about why I think and act the way they do on a certain project, I would talk about this type of recent experience, things that stood out to me that I was enthusiastic about. So why is it important to you? Why am I just talking about these experiences and saying schema a lot of times? Well, it leads to, when you have these type of difficult conversations with your team, leads to better understanding of where they're coming from and why they're behaving the way they are. It's possibly easier to resolve conflicts once you've built up this type of knowledge with your documentation team as a manager of where they're coming from. When you unpack schemas, you're not just stating a bunch of experiences that happened. You're paying attention to the language that you're using. You're paying attention to what you're enthusiastic about. And when you're doing it with your documentation team, you could also find out what they're enjoying and what they're thrilled by or what they're not thrilled by. But I guess what they're not thrilled by, that's a bit beyond the scope of this talk. So I'll just stick to enthusiasm and well-being. So just to keep telling stories from the field and how I arrived at this point that language and enthusiasm as well as schemas were important for a tech writing manager to have, was that I took my JavaScript skills and I thought, I'm going to recreate a specific segment from a show that is now cancelled because that is the only logical next step. So to describe what this is, the Letters Game, it's a segment from a now cancelled show that promotes English literacy and maths. Some people know it as Countdown, but it's called Letters and Numbers in Australia. It aired on the SBS channel. Guests on the show, they choose for the Letters Game a bunch of consonants, a bunch of vowels, and they have 30 seconds to make the longest word possible from these 9 letters of the English alphabet that they'll pick. I'm focusing on just the Letters Game. There's more rounds that they do, but that's way beyond the scope of what I can do. So just as an example of how the Letters Game works, here's a video. Okay. Yeah, so it's more professional than that in the field, but you get the idea. Let's get the sound going. I just noticed there was no sound there, so I'm going to plug in a 3mm jack and see if that works. Okay, so why, though, did I want to replicate this? That's an important question to keep talking about. And, well, there's a few reasons. I'm going to unpack a lot of them in the next few minutes. But the large reason was that the letters game has got elements of what I was taught in the JavaScript course, that it's logical, that there's clear inputs and outputs. These translate very well to a program. But the key part was you can see how when I'm talking about this letters game and what I was doing and my enthusiasm about it, why it's important to unpack what your team is enthusiastic about, because you can see what shapes their likes, their dislikes, and how they arrived at presenting themselves and doing the work the way they do. Now we've got these two factors, logical, clear input and output, making a code, but the key part though is the enjoyment factor and the enthusiasm, the well-being. It can't be understated how important this is for your tech writing team. It's a good follow-up question though to ask, well, if you put all this work into it, how did the script go? Did you actually get it working? Well, I'll return to that after I've finished speaking and we'll see how it went. And we can try out a letters round, but I'll just continue with I am Megan. So this point might come out of completely left field, but I am Megan because I am enthusiastic about the letters game on letters and numbers, because it's about language, it's about words. It's something that I get really excited and thrilled by. So I'm happy to compare myself to Megan, because Megan was a contestant on letters and numbers who was extremely enthusiastic, which I'll show you in a second, and I very much relate to Megan.
Megan, you look a bit pleased.
I've never been so excited in my life.
All I can say is you probably need to get out just a little more.
So enthusiasm is really important, I think. It's important to express things that you care about, and for managers, it's a pathway to increasing your team's well-being, which is directly linked to motivation. That's why it can't be understated, because motivation is key. Maybe you can handle these conversations differently to the way that the host of the show did just then, or maybe you can do what he did exactly. It doesn't matter. It depends on your personality and your team. You can always review, make changes, gather feedback on how your team's reacting to you. So I just want to return to that question, why recreate the letters game on this cancelled show? Well, there's another good point, and that's because of language and because of word choice. Now, I think that the value of words and the value of listening to language also cannot be understated, particularly for managers of writers. And the letters game is important because it helps you to see words and language, just see them again, to review them. I think that it's important to occasionally look at things we use every day that we might take for granted and just look at them again. And that's what the letters game is useful for. We can look at words again, understand their meaning, and it can turn us into better listeners. So in the context of managing tech writers, listening to the words they use and the language is extremely vital. So I'll summarize now. Managers would do well to listen to the language, the words that their teams use, their technical writing teams use. They should pay attention to their enthusiasm because it's directly linked to motivation. And they should unpack their schemas. It's a difficult conversation to have, but there's good reason for it. You can understand the behaviors and the thoughts that are causing your team to behave the way they are. Like, for instance, the example that I told at the beginning, why I appeared like a software developer, because I'd done a software development course that was important to me, and it affected my schema and therefore how I behaved and the words and language that I used. I did it because I was enthusiastic about it. So I'm Joe. I'm a technical writer. Just to do the introduction at the end, you can find me on socials or at thewallflyer.com. And I'll just finish also by just answering in more detail why I recreated a game from a cancelled show is because a digital version of the letters game can prevent mishaps like this from happening.
And another consonant.
M.
And a vowel, please.
So digital letters don't fall off the board. So thank you very much, everyone. Now.
Thanks for that talk, Joe.
Thank you.
The words and the language that people use, can you give some concrete examples of words or conversational domains to sort of paint that picture?
Yeah, good question. If people, I know like for my experience, when I was in that interview, I was talking about importing libraries and setting up variables and using split functions. So I was talking about specific parts of a Python script that I wrote for text analysis. So when you're using the heavy jargon like that, I guess that's one key concrete example. From the tech writing field, if they're talking about proofreading, review comments, but yeah, I might have to think about that a bit more because there's just so much that a tech writer could say. Any other questions? Yeah, follow-up question.
Yeah, you talked about enthusiasm and the importance of that.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips on generating enthusiasm, or how do you get enthusiasm? It's great to be enthusiastic. How do you do it?
Yeah, that's also really tough to answer. Because there's the question of whether the things we're enthusiastic about are innate to us and we just realize what we like when we see it, or if it can be fostered over time. I think it's a bit of both, if that makes sense, that we can learn to see how complex something is and enjoy different aspects of it. Yeah, I'm not very sure. I might have to talk more about motivational psychology with you afterwards, I think, at some point.
Yeah, it's kind of is it innate or can you generate it? It's an interesting inquiry. I've got one final question, follow on from that.
Yeah.
Are you going to double down on the developer thing, or are you going to pull those Venn diagrams apart? Which way did you end up where are you going now?
I'm going to leave it as it is. I like the idea that I've got some transferable skills, yes. But I really like writing, so I'm staying in that field. I can demo this script if anyone's interested. I've got it over here, and I've got a few minutes left, so I'll just bring it up. Okay, so I'm going to choose 4 vowels and 5 consonants. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I guess if I was playing the game, I'd have 30 seconds to... Yeah. Or we'd have 30 seconds to choose the letters and make the longest word we possibly can. And
is black toe 1 or 2 words, Joe?
That's 2 words.
Can I hyphenate it? Let's substitute the O for a hyphen.
You'd have to check the source dictionary. That's like the exact rule Bible behind it all. Yeah. I'm seeing a lot of 5 letters. But yeah. table. Cakes there, that's nice.
LCA.
Yeah, that's nice.
You had that plan, didn't you?
No, this is completely random. I can show you the script afterwards. I'm not bringing out code now. That's just too much. But yeah, so I did get it working. But anyway, thanks again, everyone.